So we have a second work derivatives question here that we're going to take a look at. This is for the delivery of 5,000 ounces of platinum in 3 months' time, and we've entered into that contract to sell it for $794.11 per ounce. The spot price when we got to that point was $812.74 per ounce, and therefore the full price that the forward contract would have been at totaled $397,055. The full spot price on that day would have been the 812.74 by 500, which would have been $406,370. Therefore, we sold on the contract at a lower price than we could have got spot, and therefore we're going to make a loss. And therefore, if we subtract one of those from the other, we make $9,315 loss. We now have another example here where we have a number of different things we want to check in relation to a contract. And so the first part of the question is to work out the number of contracts in the opening margin in the account. So in this example, we have 495,000 bushels of wheat, and we have each contract has 5,000 bushels in it. Therefore, if we take the 495,000 divided by the 5,000, that gives us the number of contracts we're going to have, which turns out in this case to be 99 contracts. So once we have the number of contracts, the next question is what the opening margin is going to be. And so again, in this case, we're told that the opening margin is $3,375 per contract. And so once we have that, again, we multiply by the number of contracts, and that tells us the opening margin is going to be 99 multiplied by 3,375, which gives you a total of $334,125 for that opening margin. So once we have that, we can also work out the maintenance margin if we want at this point, which is 2,500 multiplied by 99, which gives us $247,500. We're now in a position to set up the calculations for the final futures contract. And so when we look at it in this case, the example was a 2-week period in August. So we're going to set out the dates obviously first. We then have a daily price for those contracts. And so they're in cent. So they're between, some of them are in 400s, some of them are in the 500s, but they're all cents at this point. And that's important because we'll want it in dollars later, so we just need to bear that in mind when we're doing the calculations. So the number of bushels then, we've already worked out of 495,000. And so again, from a setup point of view, we're putting each of those in. We're now going to multiply the daily price by the number of bushels to give us the total value of the contracts that we have. And so we'll do that for each day. And you'll see that the value moves around. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. And over the period that we're looking at, we're going to see quite a bit of movement actually from day to day, and sometimes in absolute terms it can be over $100,000. I think the most is about 130. So once we have that, we want to know what the daily gain or loss was, because later on we'll be able to use that to look at our margin call. And so you can see that, as you can see there, it's 108,405 is a loss at one stage, but then there's gains of 70 and 44 and so on. And so there's big variations throughout the 2-week period. Now, once we have that information, we're now going to look at the cumulative gain or loss over the 2-week period. And so that's really just taking the gain or loss from the previous period and adding it on to the current one. And so you'll see at each stage it goes up or down depending on whether it's a gain or loss from the previous column. And once we have that, we can see what our total value actually is. Once we have that, we have our margin balance, and we can add or subtract the amounts as the time goes on, and ultimately we will apply the rule that we have with respect to the margin call. So once we drop below our margin balance or our required margin, we'll have to add money back into the account. So you can see up there about 4 or 5 days in, we've to add $133,000, 155, and again on the second last day we've to add 115,000, which means we have a net payment into the margin account of $248,985.